This is Representative Paul Gosar, Republican of Arizona. He serves the 4th District, also a member of the Freedom Caucus. Good morning.
Good morning.
Inside the Freedom Caucus itself, there's a debate going on when it comes to immigration and legal immigration. Could you give us the characterization of that debate?
Yeah, we're trying to come up with a solution that looks at what the American people wanted. They wanted border security. We were promised border security. They want to have the conversation about legal immigration. Why is it taking so long for people to come into this country the right way? And then sovereignty and border enforcement, as well as interior enforcement. That's what they want to see. They want to also have to see a conversation in regards to the DACA recipients. But I don't think it's exactly what everybody else thinks that should be. I don't think there's a pathway to citizenship that most people look at. They want to be fair, but they want to be fair across the board with everybody, not victimizing one group over another. So I think we're trying to find that line to help that debate. We got some great people. Raul Labrador, immigration attorney, has been very forward with some great ideas that are forward thinking, that actually incorporates a lot of that, the thought process that maybe there's a way to mitigate this, not just on the DACA recipients, but also other children that may be here accordingly. But then also looking at some of the quotas as far as visa lottery programs, chain migration. We got to have some changes.
So when it comes to those DACA recipients, then what threshold can you accept when it comes to some type of pathway? And is that shared amongst the Freedom Caucus as a whole, or is there debate even about that threshold?
There's a debate, because we don't want to, at least in my standpoint, and a few of us others, don't want a special process just for DACA recipients. If we're going to look at children across the board that may be the victims across this board, where we give them an opportunity to be part of the legal immigration process with maybe more of a value of that evaluation, then I think that there's something there that people can buy into, saying, listen, we're not subjugating one group over another, we're not victimizing one group or another, and we're enhancing legal immigration.
So your personal views, how do they square then with, say, the House Freedom Caucus leader, Mark Meadows? How much is he willing to give in, and does he share your views? Well,
I mean, none of us have the 100% same views. We just don't, and that's the beauty of our group is that we have that conversation. What's missing in Congress is the debate, is having to share those ideas, listening to your point of view, taking and extrapolating it with my view, and seeing if there's some way that we can come up with a solution that's amenable to both of us, that follows a process of equal application of the law. I think that's the beauty of our group. And Mark has worked very hard to try to get to a solution that mitigates some of the groups that looked at the discharge petition, as well as some of the hardliners in our group, and I'm one of them. So I think he's done a very good job.
So our guest will be with us until 8 o'clock. You can talk to him and ask him questions. 202-748-8001 for Republicans, 202-748-8000 for Democrats, Independents, 202-748-8002. That discharge petition that you spoke about. Explain that to our viewers, particularly about some Republicans even signing on to that.
Yeah, so the discharge petition is a means in which you can force legislation to come to the floor without the consent of leadership or through the regular committee process. And so it's parked on the floor. And once they get that 218, what ends up happening is depending upon when it comes available, it's brought to the floor and it's voted on. Now, in this case, it's kind of the Queen of the Hill aspect, where there'll be a number of bills inside there. Kind of like what the Senate did with the King of the Hill, is to see if they could get one that has the most votes or that passes. Okay. That can go away if one of the pieces within that construction bill that's sitting on the floor is brought forward. The one we're talking about is the Goodlatte bill. Okay, if that were to come up before that time, that discharge petition is null and void. They can start the clock all over again with a different discharge petition. But that's something that we've talked about. We've been promised that since last year from a CR aspect, that we would get a vote on the Goodlatte bill that has visa lottery, chain migration, e-verify, border security, starting to look at a renewal for DACA recipients. So that's what we're looking at, and that's what the discharge petition will do.
What do you think then about Republicans like Carlos Curbelo of Florida, who started this process, bringing it to the floor this way, and Republicans who sign on to it?
Well, all of us want to have that debate on immigration. It's long overdue, Pedro. I don't think that the discharge petition is quite the way to do that, because you cede your jurisdiction from the current leadership. You actually give it to Pelosi for that day. And that's not the way we ought to be doing things. I agree with him that the conversation needs to be had, and that's a problem with our leadership. We need to go through the proper process. Good process builds good policy, builds good politics. That's key to everything. We have no good process here. We should have made leadership toe the mark and saying, listen, bring it through the committees. Let's have that conversation. Move it, move it, move it, move it. Trust is a series of promises kept. And if you're not keeping your promises, there's no trust within the electorate body here in Congress with leadership.
The fact that we're even at the stage of a discharge petition, is that a failure then of Speaker Ryan?
It is. I've been very poignant. I've been that one person that thinks that this, we're allowing an emulation of the failings of the previous speaker. The Export-Import Bank was a discharge petition. You look at the budget process with Speaker Boehner and now with Speaker Ryan. That the process is wrong. Now, personalities aside, they're good people, but leadership comes at a price. You have to follow the rules, and you got to make sure that you're not usurping that process. We got to get back to good process, because once we get that good process, we're going to have some policy that I think the American people can buy off on. And immigration is so important. This is the fabric of this country. We can't do this behind closed doors. This has to be done publicly with the American public, piece by piece by piece, and explain it. Allow them to chime in, because this is where their voice counts the most.
Our first call for you comes from Ohio, Ashland, Ohio. This is Gary, Independent Line. You're on with Representative Paul Gosar of Arizona.
Hi, Gary.
Hello. How are you doing today?
I can't complain. It's a beautiful day here.
I hope so, but I don't think it's going to be that way. I got two questions I've been trying to get asked, and so far nobody has integrity or decency or character to answer them within a reasonable amount of time. What is the cost of illegal aliens to United States citizens? Just a dollar figure. And what's the cost of legal immigration to the dollar figure? And when are you people up there going to start taking care of the American citizens? We got people on the streets, homeless. We have people out of work, decent jobs. We're paying people not to work, and nobody's got the guts to do anything about it. And you say you're for the law, but yet you're turn right around and you're against the law.
Okay, caller, you put a list out there, so we'll let our guests respond.
Well, the cost for illegal immigration is over $100 billion in a yearly application. Legal immigration, I don't know how you define that, because I think the rewards are over and above. I mean, and we're coming to that aspect to the caller when you see that our job markets, we have more jobs now available than are actually unemployed. So one of these ways that we're going to have to look at this is that what if we need, let's say, 1 million people to come in? I would much rather go to the legal immigrations than the people that are here illegally. Now, in regards to border wall, I've been one of those stalwart people that has brought new solutions to the table. For example, in Mexico and Arizona, Mexico's high ground, we're low ground, and when they get water, we get flooded. So there's a perfect opportunity to share a border facility with a water infrastructure aspect called the Lower Santa Cruz, where Mexico would pay their fair share, 50%, the United States 50%, and you'd actually have something that both sides want and need in regards to that. It also takes care of waste that is now pouring into the United States in regards to poor septic systems. So there's a whole opportunity here that we've put forward that has been creative in regards to border facility. And you're right. Our principal instructions are to take care of the citizens of this country, absolutely. That's where I stand. And we shouldn't be able to take and victimize one group of people that are illegally here over people trying to get here legally.
From Virginia, also on our independent line, Jim, go ahead.
Good morning, Jim.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. And I'll start with when C-SPAN has lines on immigration and they open up one to the illegals to call in. I'm sorry, I'm a blue-collar guy, and I've listened to C-SPAN a lot, and I work for a living. I wish you'd open up a line for Americans that have to compete against these people and owners that own companies that have been put under stress because of people hiring illegal aliens. I've moved across this country twice, and I'm a veteran. My wife's a veteran. My son's a combat veteran. I hold a hard line on this. I work today. I'm in construction. I compete against people from Ethiopia and Grenada and Central and South America in my job. So unemployment in this country should be zero as far as I'm concerned. I show up on job sites. Nobody speaks English. I can communicate with one guy to get something across. And it's a little disheartening. I hold a hard line on this illegal immigration thing. On the DACA kids, I'm sorry, the kids, I don't care if it takes them 50 years. And I want to put in law where they do not get full citizenship. If they do, it might take them 50 years.
Gotcha.
Well, I feel the same way. You came into this country illegally, even by your own means. It wasn't up to you, and that's what the big crux of this conversation piece is that when you go back and you look at what Ronald Reagan was promised, there was an amnesty, but there was no wall. There was no border security, and we keep seeing the same facade over and over and over again, where we're allowing people to come in here. We can't deter them as refugees, political asylum. We've got to start closing these loopholes in regards to enhancing legal immigration. That's where we need to put people into that position, is not victimize one group over another. And that's what we constantly do here. And so this is a perfect time to get this right. We ought to have the respect to speak our English language in this country. That was something that our forefathers thought was so important in the communication application. And then also, we also have to be, as a people, more looking at how to fill those jobs, getting people off of welfare and enjoying the opportunity of bettering their life and their lot in life and their family's lot. So from that standpoint, I empathize with you, because we ought to be looking at enforcement and embracing legal immigration. That's exactly what we ought to be doing. And we ought to be taking care of our citizens, which is our constitutional duty.
Your colleague in Congress in the House, Representative Jeff Denham, wrote a piece taking a look at the need to force a DACA vote. He makes part in this argument saying America never punished children for the actions of their parents, and we shouldn't start now. These children and young adults know no other country is home. DACA recipients came forward at the government's request, paid their fees, some of them more than once, and passed background checks. They are part of our workforce, graduates of our high schools, enrolled in our universities. It goes on from there, but what do you think about, in part, that argument?
Well, once again, I applaud Jeff for his comments. But, how do you take in the people that came over here, like for Indian descent, that turned 21 and they're forced to go home? So shouldn't we start looking at this in an applicable light here? That what we do is we enhance and support people for legally coming here, not the illegal application. I find it kind of offensive, really offensive, that in the first action that you want to come to this country is you violate the law. What made this country great was the equal application of the law, that no one was above it. Oh, I forgot. We got Hillary Clinton sitting out there that bypasses all those types of processes. But we got to get back to it. Everybody has to be held to that same accountability. Now, I don't want to victimize children. Not at all. But these aren't children anymore. So where was the stalwartness of them to come forward? And I think everybody would like to try to help them. Citizenship is that big stretch. And the second part is family unification. Is that we're going to allow parents to come back in that were the original lawbreakers? That's the problem here. And you can't have one without the other. And that's the conversation that Jeff is missing, is that, can we do something with children? Yeah, I don't want to just do something with DACA recipients. But what about those children that are here from India and other places this is the only country they know from a legal means? And so we're going to put DACA recipients in front of them? I think not. And I think that's the dichotomy that we're finding ourselves with the American people, is They love legal immigration, but we're victimizing legal immigration on behalf of people that came here illegally.
Congress has taken many attempts at a broad immigration reform before, but
that's a problem.
But is a narrow approach to DACA maybe a better approach it's narrow?
No, the thing that has to be is that immigration is a complex piece of legislation that encumbers so many different pieces. And you have to share each of these pieces. You have to take them one at a time. You can't just put a comprehensive bill forward, because everybody knows in America when you put comprehensive behind anything, there's crap. It's a crap sandwich. Do it right. Dan Webster, my good friend from Florida as a speaker, understood this very, very well. Take it in pieces. Give it the light of day. Let it have the open debate. Bring that policy forward. I'm not going to get everything I want. Jeff's not going to get everything he wants. But because you have that conversation, you build a process and a policy that encumbers that people can go, you know what, I had my say. I see their point of view. I see how this is all interrelated. And does it put America first? Bingo.
Let's go to Republican line, San Antonio, Texas. Tina, hello.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. Good morning. Yes, my comment is I just wanted to know what is the workers in the White House will do about the problem that we have here in Texas. The overpopulation in schools, in jobs, there's refusal to speak English. There is no other races working on businesses, doctor's office, stores. We just overpopulated, and it's very hard for legal Americans to get jobs here. And I feel that's very unfair to Americans. And that's my comment.
Once again, we ought to be looking at our laws are sovereign to those individuals that are here in this country legally. We ought to be looking at citizens first. How do we empower and embrace and support the citizens of this country? And an immigration process that rewards people if they're doing it right. That is key. One of your big problems is very similar to what in Arizona we have, is that a lot of our influxes are coming from people from California. Because that refuge in California now is the higher taxes, the cost of doing business in California is sending businesses and people streaming into Arizona and Texas. So that's also part of that problem as well. But this has to be a unified conversation on a solution. You don't do it by discharge petitions. That actually makes it worse. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take one group of people and put them in front of another. And without the due process of a good conversation, a deliberate conversation, you're going to have hard feelings. And immigration is the biggest key that we should be doing this the right way.
From Antelope, California, Larry, Democrats line. Hi.
Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. Yes. My main thought about the DACA people is that they need to be returned to their countries of origin and apply through the embassy or consulate nearby for legal entrance into the United States. And about immigration in general, I would like to see a moratorium so we can absorb the huge number of immigrants, legal and illegal, that we've had pour into the country over the last 50 years. I think Tina hit the nail on the head when she said the quality of life for tax-paying U.S. citizens is going down the tubes as a result of all of the legal and illegal migration that has occurred.
You're right. Most people now believe that you're starting to see a majority of Americans saying, listen, we ought to not just be capping the number of immigrants, but maybe we ought to be lowering them. Instead of bringing over 1 million people into this country, we're a generous country. Maybe we ought to be looking at reducing that application of those folks coming into this country and taking care of the cracks and fissures and the problems that we have in this country. You can't help anybody unless you help yourself and you have a solid foundation in your country. I agree with you. There's a mayday here because this is the core fabric of this country is immigration, but it's also the core fabric that will tear us apart. And that's the problem, is that if we don't do it right, I keep coming back to it. Good process builds good policy, builds good politics. Plain and simple. And this is something that the American people would really deserve to have a conversation with and have their voices heard instead of the special interests. That's the key here. We're all immigrants, even Native Americans. They came from other areas as well. So how do we fabricate that, following the rule of law and enabling and empowering, keyword, empowering instead of victimizing solutions? When people are empowered, remember when you're a kid and or a parent and you've got kids and they do something wrong. Sometimes there's those things called tough love that makes you the better person, that makes you understand your role in life and that you have to be part of a solution. You can't just be given everything. So I think this is a case where we have to have some tough love. Is there an ability to have these DACA or these folks that came in as children to stay here but not with citizenship? Maybe that's where I'm at, is that I don't want to give a special denotation for these people, but I also don't want to violate the trust of the American people by saying, listen, I'm not embracing legal immigration. That's all I want, is legal immigration.
What about the process? Is there a possibility of streamlining the immigration process for those who would go back to their countries and apply to become it? Is there a way to streamline the current process?
He brought up a perfect scenario because now what we have is we have these political asylees coming up through Mexico. So the best way to be would be going back to that our consulate and our embassies to petition there. Because, as I've told the Attorney General, isn't it once Mexico allows some of these refugees to come through, aren't they giving them a status already so that our laws, we could turn around and send them back? There's got to be a better way in regards to that enforcement application. Citizenship here is not a right. It is a privilege. It is a privilege. Once again, it is not a right, it is a privilege. And so from that standpoint, I love the matrix of our fabric. It is so diverse, it's unbelievable. But there's got to be a better way. And I think the American people are starting to rise up and see this.
A couple other topics. The House Speaker announcing that he's going to leave office. Who should take his place?
I'm a fan of Jim Jordan. Once again, I'll bring it back up. Good process builds good policy, builds good politics. We have not seen that from this leadership team. And I'm very outspoken about it. I've been one of the first people. I didn't care for Paul Ryan's first run. I voted for him because Donald Trump wanted him in the speakership last time. But I'm now out there saying, listen, I can't do this anymore. We've got to go back to good policy.
Why not Kevin McCarthy or Steve Scalise?
Because they're part of the same cloth. Okay, so let's watch. John Boehner. Bad process, bad policy, bad politics. We get Paul Ryan, who follows the same mold. So I need a clean sweep. I need to have a whole new leadership team to reinvent this process of listening to members. I brought up Raul Labrador. Here's a great guy who's been an immigration attorney who's got this insight. These are people that ought to be leading the discussion. Okay, we've got people like Mac Thornberry on government or on military. We need to have a speaker that builds on that process, so that we have the great policy and all these different facets, and start listening to the American people. That's what we're here. We're a representative republic, a constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. When I hear people hear that over and over again, no, we are not. We're a republic. Get back to your roots and find out how do you get back to that good policy.
What is it about Jim Jordan that convinces you that he's going to take in all the scope of the Republican Party, not just ones you represent?
No, the more and more you start to listen, Pedro, the American people are coming back to that process, saying, listen, we like that Freedom Caucus. Okay? They may have some ideas that we don't care for, but they're getting back to that process. They're asking the questions that create the debate. They're saying, listen, is this really where we want